Isn't industrial efficiency great? I don't know about you, but the little Sims and workers and resources hate it when factories sit idle, or worse, make things that don't bring a lot of currency into the treasury of the people. That's the kind of things that turns them to drink, which leaves less booze for us to export. A travesty! Now, rumors say that the electronics factories we've worked so hard to build are nowhere near as profitable as we want. So perhaps it's time for a little inspection. Last time in the Soviet Republic of Arab map, we discovered that you can disassemble cows into pieces of delicious meat on a massive scale. Meat keeps our citizens alive, healthy and cheerful, and makes sure their teeth remain strong and coats ever so lustrous and shiny. We also found that exported meat can be a very profitable enterprise, even if we have to schlep thousands of tons of grain in long trains from abroad for it. Those refrigerator wagons might as well have stacks of cash in them, and at the end of the 7-year animal husbandry plan, I'm happy to say that we're crushingly fast on paying back our development debts. Also, I wouldn't say, because we're not here to bask in glory and just let that number in our account go up undisturbed. While our meat-pumping endeavor has been a massive success, it has dialectically underscored the weakness of the otherwise beautiful electronics combine we constructed a few video and moons ago. So I wonder if we could make it a little better. Let's go back to when we still didn't have an electronics industry of our own and retrace our previous steps exploring it. We started by building just one electronics assembly factory and buying all of the inputs it needed. The result, surprisingly, wasn't all that bad, offering a 17% discount compared to just importing electronics. For exports, the deal was far less impressive at only 8%, which hopefully covered the fuel and the vehicle repairs expenses to run the factory. Well, that's about it. Then we looked at the cost of all of the different materials that went into making electronics. That got us this nice and tight production complex with 3 electronics and 2 electrical facilities, all hugging a big warehouse that supplies them with almost everything they need. This arrangement brought the costs down and the profit margin up to a workable 22%. That's where we left off last time, but with a more successful meat factory nearby, seeing most of the electronics income being still immediately eaten up by the necessary raw materials was not great. Plus, importing 3 types of goods to feed 5 factories of 2 different kinds in a single train is a finicky affair, so could we just upgrade these factories a bit and make them work a lot better? And it's about time we ask this, because of course we can. And although plastics are the biggest cost item of the electronics combine, it's the mechanical components that pique my interest first, because of how easy of an addition that factory is. It only consumes steel, and we already have integrated storage for it, and it only needs to work at about 40% capacity to feed the 3 electronics factories. You do kind of need to set up an ugly truck line to move the mechanical components into the main warehouse, but that's all the hassle there is. The factory actually has an okay profit margin of its own, so does it help with the overall costs? A little bit, just 2 percentage points, and the whole combine now runs at a profit margin of just over 24%. It's still way below the 44% of the meat factories, but I'll take it, for simpler logistics if nothing else. Mechanical components is not the cheapest of factories, but the profit boost pays off that cost in about 100 days, and the additional costs like the roads, truck and distro offices double that. The thing is simple and gives a decent enough result, and after all, you do need those mechs elsewhere too. But at this point, I know you're just shouting at me.
It's the plastics! Do the plastics, you knob!
Yes. Plastics make up half the cost of the vibration massagers and synthesizer pianos we've grown to enjoy, and supplying our electronics production with plastics takes 2 plastics factories. They are actually not that hard to attach to the combine either, with 1 forklift connection to the main warehouse for taking the chemicals and feeding back the plastic. I've found that the 8 forklifts I built for are enough to move the chemicals, but not enough to move the plastic. Adding a task to the mechanical components distribution office is a good enough solution to that, but raising the number of forklifts to 12 should also do the trick. The two plastics factories also guzzle up a mad amount of oil, so this is the perfect time to set up a foreign pipeline connection. And once it's there, the logistics for making plastics is sorted out for good. Haven't you heard? Oil is the best thing ever. It'd go in pipe and get the job done. It's like Gordon Freeman of raw materials. But what about our profits? Well, plastics make a bigger dent than mechanical components do, cutting almost $4,000 off the daily production costs and kicking the profit margin up to 30%. Another piece of good news is that the plastics factories are really cheap. The downside is that the pipelines and oil connections can easily triple or quadruple this cost. But then you build all that stuff and now you have a working import-export oil connection that you can use for something else. And in any case, even with a pessimistic quadruple cost scenario, this upgrade pays off in about 3 months. So do it! Do it now! So after all of this upgrading, our electronics combine only imports steel, oil, and chemicals and cranks out cash at a 30% profit margin. That's 8 percentage points of efficiency, all in a day's work for Sam the Streamliner. This may not seem like a huge number, but at full production, it gets you an additional 6,000 rubles every day. And I'm sure you can multiply it by 365 to find out how much this could mean for your annual budget. It is a tangible cash benefit and a huge simplification of logistics. However, this is where we hit the ceiling with the easy upgrades, because to deliver the quantities of chemicals and steel we consume to make the electronics, we need to set up huge factory complexes, and each of which is an immense undertaking of its own, and perhaps a reason to revisit the manufacture of electronics in the future. But suffice it to say that adding this gorgeous big chemical factory makes the profit margin soar to 68%, because at this point you're effectively using sticks and turds to make something vibrating and fun. Before I leave, let me mention one of the many growing pains the meat complex went through once I hit the start button on it. It's about trash, and how easy it is to underestimate how much of it the cows and butchers make. Every farm produces as much as a food factory, every livestock range and a slaughterhouse twice as much. The entire combine dumps as much junk as 34 food factories, and you need extraordinary measures to handle that. Now, I'm only in my sophomore year at the Red Banner Institute of Garbage Technology, but here's what I had to do in addition to making sure that every facility is connected to a big waste container stand. There is a large technical office equipped with 15 big container trucks and set to a relatively short working range. These trucks move all that farm and slaughterhouse waste to a nearby container transfer site. This makes sure that they never take long trips anywhere and can promptly react to any trash piling up in the meat facilities. Then I have a distribution office that picks the garbage up from the transfer site. I still export most of that trash, so they move it to another transfer site that is halfway from the border. That second transfer site has a distribution office of its own, and that office finally moves the waste into the customs point. With this approach, every vehicle takes short trips and doesn't help create huge waves of traffic that can overwhelm the customs. This intermediate hub also means that I'm much more flexible if I decide to set up recycling and want to divert some of the trash into it. I won't have to redo the entire waste transport system from the cow farm to the customs house, and just setting up a little logistical offshoot of this line will be enough. Finally, in addition to allowing the storage of different types of waste at the same time, container transfer sites have a huge loading and unloading speed advantage over the usual waste dumps. But there can be no end to all this trash talk, so let me just leave you with a promise of something potentially far more explosive next time.